for one another. I urge you then to make me completely happy by having the same thoughts, sharing the same love, and being in one soul and mind. Don't do anything from selfish ambition or from cheap desire to boast, but be humble toward one another, always considering others better than yourselves, and look out for one another's interests and not just for your own. The attitude that you should have is the one that Christ Jesus had. He always had the nature of God, but he did not think that by force he should try to remain equal with God. Instead of this, of his own free will, he gave up all that he had and took the nature of a servant. He became like a human being and appeared in human likeness. He was humble and walked the path of obedience all the way to death, his death on the cross. For this reason, God raised him to the highest place above and gave him the name that is greater than any other name. And so in honor of the name of Jesus, all beings in heaven, on earth, and in the world below will fall on their knees, and all will openly proclaim that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Humility is a rare quality today because we are encouraged to do our own thing, flouting rules flagrantly. To be humble is to honestly assess oneself, faults and virtues, to love what is good in oneself, and to work with the Holy Spirit to transform what needs changing. To be humble is to know that one possesses some wisdom, but that others do as well. It is not to be believing that no one else has any sense at all. This does not mean that we downplay our strengths and pretend that we have little worth or value. Rather, humility is the recognition that what good qualities we have come from God, that they are to be used to bless others, that everyone has some good qualities as well, and that if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves. Let us all beware lest pride and self-conceit undermine our spiritual maturity, damage our good name, and destroy the good influence that we might have had. Honorable members, continue to listen to the least, listen to the youth, listen to the elderly, listen to the uneducated. They all have a story to share. They all have some degree of insight from experience. They often have wisdom that comes through revelation from God. Pray and weigh what we have to say, then follow the guidance of the Holy Spirit to make the best decisions on our behalf. Let us pray. O God of grace and glory, we give you praise and thanks for the many blessings bestowed upon us. Let us never forget that we are made in your image, that we are helpless without your saving help. Thank you for suffering on the cross for our sins and raising us to new life as a result of your resurrection. Let us never forget that we are all equal, we are all loved by you, that we are all unique. Keep us humble as you are, Lord, and may we seek to obey God's will, walking the path of obedience all the way as you did. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever.
Good morning, honorable members. Good morning again, honorable members. Thank you very much. Honorable members, we have with us this morning a distinguished group of Bahamian citizens. As we all know, this is Autism Month, and we have just recently, yesterday afternoon, the Light It Up Blue ceremony right here in Rawson Square. And we have this morning with us a number of persons from the REACH organization. REACH is the acronym for Resources and Education for Autistic and Related Challenges. Can you please kindly stand for us, please? Thank you very much. At this time, I would call on the Minister responsible, the Honorable Member for Southern Shores, to bring greetings and remarks. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Southern Shores.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity to allow me to recognize some very important partners of the Ministry of Social Services. I do have a formal communication, and so I will say more at the point of communication by ministers. But at this point, I beg leave just to recognize the persons here present individually. And so in no particular order, we have Greer Simonet Bain, who is a REACH board member. Hold up your hand, so we have Shamika Moss from Blairwood Academy. We have Kim Kouskalis. I got it right? Yes. Director of Blairwood Academy. We have Shanae Davis, a REACH volunteer and parent. We have Dr. Deshaun Sanders. We have Paula Hospitalis. Yes. We have Kim Gibson. We have DeCosta Bethel. We have Sandra Mullings, all the way from Southern Shores. Yes. We have Krista Major. We have Duranda Minus. And we have Jackie Hilton. There's one person I want to stand up, William Hilton Jr. He's a student of REACH. He is a singing sensation. You can't sing today, William, but I point him out as evidence of what results we could get if we bring the children out and expose them to the therapy that is available. Mr. Speaker, let's speak some more.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair now recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do want to say a few words. First and foremost, I want to congratulate the members of the board, REACH organization, who has been fighting this fight for a very long time and trying their best to provide as much assistance as possible to our children with, who has been inflicted with autism. Mr. Speaker, I think it's essential for us to know that there are various different degrees of autism, and depending on the degree of severity, then it would have a greater impact on the quality and the outcome of an individual's life, but not just that particular individual, Mr. Speaker, but also the entire family. So it's not an isolated phenomenon. And it can affect the quality of life for that entire household and adjoining families. Mr. Speaker, we don't know the incidence of autism within our Commonwealth, but what we do know is that the CDC stated that the incidence within the U.S. Is about 1 in 59. And we basically follow the same statistical pathway. In some states in the U.S., it's even more frequent than that. And we note that it's becoming even more frequent. Yes, individuals may have incriminated immunization as one of the etiological factors in the past. However, we know that that is not the case. And that may be one of the reasons why we're seeing immunization rates decreasing, thus exposing our society to more communicable diseases like measles and other diseases of such nature. But, Mr. Speaker, it's important to note that most of the members here today and the supporters of our children are women. And in many instances, it's the women who carry the burden initially, because many of us as fathers remain in denial. And it takes us a very long time for us to recognize that, yes, it's affected our kids, and we, if we want to a better outcome, we must become involved. But as fathers and men, we now recognize that and becoming more involved. But it's essential for government to likewise do all it can to assist each and every child and every family within our society. When you look at the possibility within our structure, possibility of about 7,000 of our students being affected, that is more than the student complement of C.R. Walker, Anatole Rogers, and C.V. Bethel together. So just imagine, those 3 schools combined, we have a populace of about twice the number of students in those 3 schools combined that needs assistance. And we've ignored that for too long. And Mr. Speaker, I can speak on behalf of the government. And we will add an additional $100,000 within our budget. And I know that the REACH organization has been asking for availability of land so that they can put the proper infrastructure in place so that they can not only assist in diagnosing these cases very early, but they can assist in managing the students as they go through life, but also after. We don't take into consideration that there's an after-school program that has to be implemented also. And therefore, I can say that on behalf of the government, we are prepared, once the land is identified, to release land for the REACH organization. We will go one step further, Mr. Speaker, and I am certain that the Minister of Finance, will have no objection. I say to the REACH organization, we do not have the funds to construct your complex for you, but we can assist by removing all duties from your supplies and materials that are necessary for And I would ask the populace, the Bahamian populace, that they must consider that if 7,000 of our kids are affected, and we say categorically that we are preparing the Bahamas for a future generation, they too are part of the Bahamas, and they too must move with the future, and the future must be prepared also for them. And therefore, I ask all Bahamians to become involved so that they can make donations wherever necessary. to help the organizations obtain the supplies and equipment as opposed to putting the stress and strain on just a few individuals. We all can do our part, even if individuals are donating $100, $200, or $10 each. Always remember that all great oak tree was once a nut. So we can start from small and become big and complete. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I just want to congratulate the REACH organization for the excellent job that they've done, and the government will do their part, but I want them to leave this Parliament remembering one thing. We did not promise that we will construct the building for you. We cannot, and I'm being upfront with you. We cannot, and we will. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Angleston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I am pleased to stand to recognize this incredible group of people who are attached to the development and excellent progress of children with autism. I appreciate all that the Prime Minister has indicated in terms of policy initiatives, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, when I was starting out in politics in 2002, I was going door to door, and I was amazed at the amount of children I had come across with cerebral palsy. I had no idea. And you can imagine when you're dealing with working class mothers who have children with these special demands, which we all know would require incredible resources. You can imagine the amount of pressure and turmoil that's created in those households, because most times mothers have to work. I recall in particular a woman from Key West Street whose daughter had cerebral palsy. She was an amazing woman because she stopped working. She stopped working. She's living in a wooden house on Key West Street, and she stopped working to care for this child. And the child ultimately died, I guess, probably in her early 20s. But when I met her, it was the 18th birthday of this child. And I think her name was Kim. And so it sort of opened my eyes, because I had no idea of what the challenges are for children and parents with special needs. And our former Prime Minister, Perry Christie, had a child with autism. Sir? Has a child, but as I say former, he's the former Prime Minister, and he has a child with autism. And I believe that he did much, Mr. Speaker, to advance the conversation. I know many feel that more could have been done, I've heard that, but I can tell you, I think much was done. And if you may recall, a committee was appointed, which for the first time looked at the needs for special education for children. It never happened before in the history of our country. It was the first singular focus of children with special needs. And of course, things flowed from that. When we last served, we had identified a location in Gladstone Road for the construction of a compound for children with special needs, including disabilities, physical disabilities, and children with autism, and the entire spectrum. And I'm told by the former Minister of Works that the Chinese had given a grant of about 15 million that we could assign a use, and we had determined that it would be signed, and the architectural plans were completed. And so, Prime Minister, I am very pleased at your commitment, and I would invite you to go back and review the record to see what the status of that, because I think the land was identified. And on Gladstone Road. No, I'm just saying that I remember it because Melanie Griffin was the Minister of Social Services, and there were plans completed. I'm not being combative. I'm just inviting you to go back and let's give more. I appreciate the 100,000. I think that's very important. But, Mr. Speaker, what we learned, and this is what my learning process was, that every child can learn, and every child has the right to develop that child's full potential, whatever that is. And when you do that, it is the most amazing phenomena. We saw in the Special Olympics just recently, our children earned gold medals. And I trust the Minister for Sports will give the appropriate celebration of their achievements when she deems that appropriate. But they were amazing in their achievements. And that tells you what can happen when you invest and give the opportunity. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to wind up by commending these parents and specialty professionals for the work that you do, particularly the professionals for focusing on what we may deem the least of us and building them so that they become amazing blooms in our national life. And for the parents, I know your struggle is real, but you have taught us the value and the meaning of unconditional love. And I've seen it. I see Kim Gibson in the gallery, who I've known all my life, basically. She's younger than me. And I've seen the interaction. So Mr. Speaker, we thank the Prime Minister for all of the concessions noted to support the efforts of parents and professionals in causing our children with this autism on its various the various areas of the spectrum, causing them to develop and meet their full and true potential as meaningful participants in our social life as a people. And Mr. Speaker, and I would just speak to the educational system. I believe, Mr. Speaker, and that the Prime Minister has alluded to the fact that the population is about 7,000 and 3 schools, etc. And I think that we have to, in our educational policy, not just in ad hoc initiatives, but an educational policy that we have a firm developmental provision for children with special needs. I know we do have it to some extent, but I think it has to now become a pillar of our educational policy so that we are able to factor in and integrate children with special needs into the educational journey that we have as a people. And so again, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend all of the stakeholders and to say that you are shining beacons to this country. And you have taught us. You've taught us, or those of us who are impatient, those of us who are unaccepting, those of us who are discriminatory, those of us who are biased, you have taught us that love it has no boundary, and that it is a continuity of the interaction of the human spirit. And so we thank you for that example, because it is something that has to be seen and heard more deeply in this country. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, there has been a request of the chair by the Honorable Member for Long Island to address a matter of national importance, and I'm in possession of his communication, and I'm satisfied that it is not of a controversial nature, and the chair has acceded to his request. The chair now recognizes the Honorable Member for Long Island.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity to address an ongoing illegal act on the part of persons familiar with the Water and Sewage Corporation. Let me also thank the good people of Long Island for affording me the great privilege of being in this place, Mr. Speaker, and commence with expressing my condolences to the family of Mrs. Anthony Knowles, passed last week. Mr. Speaker, I believe in accountability, structure, and a disciplined environment, and running a clean ship. Mr. Speaker, after an illegal strike action yesterday and today, certain persons intimately familiar with the workings at the Water and Sewage Corporation have engaged in an illegal shutdown of the water supply in various parts of New Providence. And as I sat here a moment ago, it was reported that the sewer network was also tampered with, as there were lift station overflows at Awaki, Chipping Arm Sewer Station, as well as Pinewood Gardens. Mr. Speaker, throughout the night, pressure regulating valve alarms were going off across New Providence. This indicated that pressure regulating valves were being shut off throughout the island in a concerted and intentional effort to disrupt the water supply. Additionally, persons threw stones and rocks into the valves to cause irreparable damage, major costs to WSC, and untold hardship to our customers. The areas affected included Wolf Road, South, Prince Charles, Soldier Road, Fox Hill, Elizabeth Estates, Baintown, Palmdale, PMH, Doctors Hospital, Bahama. And then, of course, as we checked, you had areas in southern New Providence, central and western New Providence, pretty much the entire island. As a result of these acts, the country is tremendously inconvenienced by this wanton disruption of a necessary amenity for thousands of Bahamians. We have mobilized emergency teams who are traveling to the various sites with police escort and are restoring the supply. Mr. Speaker, these malicious acts of sabotage, criminality, and a sick effort to terrorize and inflict hardship upon Bahamians and residents come on the heels of condemnable and incendiary utterances made elsewhere. This has become a national security issue, and it's an attempt to cause damage to WSC's standing. It is simply unpatriotic. Speaker.
Honorable member, stick to your script.
It's here. It's here, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have referred this matter to the police, and we are in the process of filing our second police complaint in 2 days. Mr. Speaker, night before last, our camera footage showed a truck familiar to managers and staff at WSC entering the compound via the back gate. The truck stayed for 2 to 3 minutes. The driver of the vehicle then chained the gate and knocked out our camera. The police have been reviewing footage from various other cameras, taking statements of security officers and other personnel, and no doubt will be addressing the matter further. An official complaint has been filed. Mr. Speaker, the General Manager and I, along with members...
Honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador. On a point of order.
I'm constrained to raise on this point of order because the member is clearly engaged in matters that are controversial. This is one side of a story. If it were that he is going to appraise us, that there are issues. No, but you don't have to go into details because from what I'm gathering, the matter is with the police. Because it is akin, I'm not saying it is akin to matters being sub judice. He's allowing, the police are investigating, and here it is, he's telling us what the police is to be finding. And that is the concern, Mr. Speaker. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful in how we are describing
sets of circumstances which are subjective to you.
Yes. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Mr. Speaker, as the member has responsibility of water and sewage, and water is an essential element for survival of mankind, the member has a responsibility to report to the nation as to what exactly is happening, what has transpired, and why their water supply is not functional. Absolutely. This is an opportunity for him to speak to the Bahamian populace, and opportunities given should not be denied.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honorable member. Honorable member for Cat Island. If we can permit the member to complete his statement, and then following which, if you wish to raise any issue, if
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, the General Manager and I, along with members of the ExCom and the board, will hold a press conference sometime this afternoon to fully address all matters, many of which I won't speak to in this brief statement. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to call upon all right-thinking Bahamians to condemn the disparaging, sexist remarks made about women at the corporation and their upward mobility. These remarks are disgraceful, reckless, and entirely unacceptable. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the illegal strike for which there was no strike vote and no strike certificate, I encourage
honorable members, permit the member to complete.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Notwithstanding the illegal strike for which there was no strike vote and no strike certificate, I encourage those persons who left WSC, those customers, still return to the system. There's some hard-working persons there. Notably, between both unions, out of an employee complement of nearly 440, only about 50-plus persons, a little over 10%, participated in those actions. To the public, I say, we are working to restore your water supply and have been working hard to restore and heighten their confidence in our corporation and to expand our water mains throughout the archipelago. We will continue with our reformist approach and with our efforts to bring you quality service and water to places that have never had running water. I would like to thank our hard-working and dedicated teams for their efforts last night and throughout the morning, Mr. Speaker. Special thanks are extended to Mr. Erno Bow, Ralph Middleton, Terrence Antonio, Trevor Roberts, Devin Wilmot, Thomas Desmangles, Mario Tavera from MIA, Robert Deal, Elwood Donaldson, and all the other members of the NPO water team that work so hard and are working so diligently to restore the water supply. And I also wish to thank the police, member for Mount Moriah, for sticking with us throughout the night. As our teams went from place to place throughout New Providence, seeking to restore the supply. Mr. Speaker, I end by stating the following. Any employee found to have tampered with the water supply will be summarily dismissed and referred to the police. This type of behavior will not be tolerated. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Mr. Speaker, it was a statement that you indicated would not be controversial. I understand that was your view, but I would like to have the record reflect from our side that we thought it was controversial. Mr. Speaker, I say this because you are not unfamiliar with industrial action. You're not unfamiliar. And it is clear that what we are experiencing now at the Water and Sewage Corporation are a result of industrial disputes that have been allowed to fester and fester.
Honorable member. Honorable member for Long Island, let me hear the member for Cat Island.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And so the question has to be asked is why and how these issues have been allowed to bubble to the point where the allegations are now that employees are engaged in conduct that is inimical, that is not healthy to anyone.
Honorable member.
And that is what.
I understand the point you're making.
And so, Mr. And then, Mr. Speaker, the other point here is that the member went on to say, for example, that about 50% out of the 400 employees at the corporation participated or have been participating in an illegal strike. And then he goes on to name and to give congratulatory, meritorious commentary in respect to others, about 6. But he only name what, 6?
Honorable member.
And therein again, it becomes controversial. And all he's doing is adding to the fire.
Honorable member.
Prime Minister, you need to get involved and clear this matter up and sort it out.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Mr. Speaker, I am involved. The member has the complete support of the government. We will not, and we will not condone or accept any misbehavior or sabotage the government equipment, materials, and such, and subsequently interfere with the quality of life of Bahamians.
It's a point of clarity.
Honorable member. Honorable members, as we move along on the order of business in continuing with communications by the Speaker, I am in possession of a report from the Office of the Auditor General, and this report is an audit of the National Sports Authority for the period July 2011 to December 2017, which I wish to table at this time. Copies will be made available to each member. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kelani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following. The Industry Encouragement Approval Product Well Done Drilling Services Limited, Order 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following. The Industry Encouragement Approved Manufacturer Well Done Drilling Services Limited, Order 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town. Honorable member.
At the wrong place here, sitting next to the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just move that the House do suspend for about 10 minutes. The organization, the REACH organization, is downstairs, and I would like to give all members an opportunity to be able to take a photograph with that august association. And so we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll reassume the business of the House when the next individual up will be the member for Elizabeth.
Is this seconded? Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do suspend for approximately 10 minutes. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House stands suspended for approximately 10 minutes. Honorable members, when the business of this House suspended, the honorable member for Elizabeth had reserved the floor. The chair now recognizes the honorable member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the first ever annual report of the National Health Insurance Authority dated June 30th, 2018.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up.
Please. There, second. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I lay on the table of the House the Stamp Gaming Patron Revocation Rules 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I lay on the table of the House the Gaming House Operators Amendment Regulation 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for North Abaco.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the International Obligations, Economic and Ancillary Measures, Democratic People's Republic of Korea Order 2019.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
There are no further laying of documents, Mr. Speaker.
Statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Southern Shores.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased and grateful for the opportunity to stand in this place one more time for and on behalf of the good people of Southern Shores. I want to, with your indulgence, thank the constituents who have been sending their information relative to the Love Your Yard cleanup campaign. I want to advise constituents, Mr. Speaker, that starting this weekend, we will begin the removal of derelict vehicles in the Ferguson sub area of Carmichael Road. I invite constituents to continue to send in their information, and I assure constituents that our partnership to keep Southern Shores clean is in order. Mr. Speaker, I'm a country music lover at heart. And Kenny Rogers is one of my favorite artists. Kenny Rogers says you gotta know when to hold and you gotta know when to fold. After hearing the presentation from Kalani, the most honorable Prime Minister, with the amount of the subvention and land and all of that for the community of reach and persons helping with the fight against autism, I realized that nothing in my communication could possibly match that. So let me then segue and hold by saying, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honorable Prime Minister and Member for Kalani for his generosity, for his acknowledgement of the plight of children with autism and the persons that seek to assist them, the persons who have no choice, like family members who have to make their situation a part of their lives, and for, first of all, signing the proclamation to make the month of April Autism Awareness Month. And then I want to thank him for all the generous gifts that has followed. And strangely enough, I saw a smile on the face of the Deputy Prime Minister for once. For once, when we talk about giving monies, the Deputy Prime Minister smiled. So I want to thank the Deputy Prime Minister for that. Mr. Speaker, while we were busy painting Rawson Square blue last evening, I heard a comment from someone who was quoting somebody else. And the comment was, and I'm paraphrasing, that while it takes a village to raise a child, it takes an autistic child to bring this village together. That, Mr. Speaker, is evident here in the House this morning when you consider the contribution coming from the Honorable Member for Angliston, who is in full support of the work of REACH and all the relevant partners and stakeholders, and who is also in full support of all that is being promised and forecasted by the Honorable Prime Minister, Member for Kalani. I pray, Mr. Speaker, that there will be many more such occasions when there will be that kind of unanimous support for any matter here in this place.
Remain hopeful.
And so, Mr. Speaker, I would take this opportunity and use this platform to appeal to various specialists, various business houses, various civic-minded groups and organizations to give services to REACH gratis as a way of giving back to the community. I also take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank Corporate Bahamas, and for fear of leaving out anyone, I won't name anyone, but they know who they are. Corporate Bahamas, who've been actively supporting all the fundraisers and all the events and the summer camp and the parenting support groups that REACH would have had. I want to thank the private school systems that are involved in offering education and therapy for persons with autism. I want to thank the Minister of Education, who was a part of the Turning Rawson Square Blue, along with most of the Cabinet and Parliamentary caucus yesterday evening,
for the contribution of the Ministry of Education and all of its schools. And Angliston alluded to them, all of the government schools that are involved. We have at the primary level, preschool level, junior and senior high school level, that are ensuring that there is some level of inclusion and access to education for persons with autism, albeit, and I accept that more needs to be done. I'm satisfied that in comparison to where we used to be many years ago, we are at least headed in the right direction. I will not preempt the Minister of Education, but I'm aware that, like the Prime Minister, the Minister of Education is holding in his bag of goodies some gifts for persons who are engaged in helping and improving the lives of persons with disabilities, including those involved in this fight against autism. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to invite members of the public, members here present, to participate in the events that will be held during the month for autism. They have an Easter egg hunt. They have a t-shirt day every Friday throughout the month. And I'm satisfied that the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Renewal will have on their shirts on Fridays. There's the Fun Run Walk at Montague Beach, the jazz concert, and the parenting support group. I don't have but they have a very vibrant and active social media program. Mr. Speaker, I'm cognizant of the barriers as well as the challenges that parents face. Embarrassment, difficulty accessing services, an insensitive community, costly and unavailable services, and long waiting lists among many others. And it's for that reason that I am grateful for the work that REACH is doing. I am proud of the partnership between REACH and the Ministry of Social Services, and I take this opportunity to reassure the chairman, Mr. Gibson, and his board. That's Mr. Gibson from REACH, not Adrian Gibson. And his board for the work that they're doing. I invite as many who are able and have the time and the resources to lend to them their support. I commend all persons who are involved in any way, form, or fashion. And I end by reassuring the support and the partnership of the Ministry of Social Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for South Beach.
May it please the Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would have said a word or two about the autism and REACH. I do not have it prepared, so I will share it next week in terms of what the Ministry of Education is doing and intends to do to assist this very important initiative in our country. Sir, by letter dated August 2nd, 2018, the Ministry of Education received an invitation from Mr. Kate Noble, Chief Executive of the Vaki Foundation, inviting this minister to the Global Education and Skills Conference to be held in Dubai, March 20th to 24th, 2019. We accepted on the condition that all expenses for this minister would be paid by the Vaki Foundation, which it was. Conference was held in Dubai at the Atlantis Palm, a sister property from the Atlantis on Paradise Island. I was accompanied by my wife and the education director, Mr. Marcellus Taylor. The Vaki Foundation was established by billionaire Sonny Vaki of the United Arab Emirates to promote the value of and appreciation for teachers around the globe. In that vein, he established a global teacher prize, which has spawned teacher prizes in countries around the world. The foundation's principal aim is to build the capacity and status of teachers to ensure that the quality of teaching is enhanced and that outcomes are improved. Its vision is the quality education for every child through boosting the capacity and status of teachers around the world. How propitious we are talking about every child here today. According to the foundation, teachers matter, who every day in classrooms around the world do amazing things, but too often whose work goes unrecognized and unrewarded. Research by the Vaki Foundation, Mr. Speaker, carried out in 2013, found that few people see teaching as a high-status job, and few think pupils respect their teachers. Relatively few parents, they found, say that they would encourage their children to be teachers. According to the World Economic Forum, rather the World Education Forum, the Vaki Foundation, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, and the United Nations, there is a severe shortage of teachers around the world as we speak. And it is estimated that by the year 2030, there will be a shortage of 69 million teachers to provide universal primary and secondary education for our children. One recent study from the World Bank showed that only 9% of teachers in sub-Saharan Africa had the minimum required knowledge of pedagogy to effectively teach the curriculum, and only 7% could correctly mark a Year 4 test on spelling and comprehension. On the 23rd and 24th of March this year, more than 2,200 delegates gathered in Dubai at the Global Education and Skills Forum to share, debate, and shape new ways for education to transform our world. Global Education Forum 2019 culminated in the awarding of the Global Teacher Prize, where movie star Hugh Jackman announced that Peter Tabichi, a science teacher from Nakuru, Kenya, was this year's winner. Mr. Tabichi was awarded a $1 million prize and was recognized for the exceptional work he did and does for his school and community. During that conference, 3-day conference, there were many, many, many sessions that were attended by myself and the director, including breakthrough research in outlining the findings on the science of teaching and learning, what is happening in the learning science, showcasing leading educational technologists for tomorrow's classroom, and the Ed Billion Educational Tech Summit. To date, the programs of the Vaki Foundation have trained over 46,000 teachers around the globe, 3,000 schools, and have reached more than 1.6 million children. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the director and I also attended sessions on girls' education, education technology, education leadership, and teacher training. In particular, teacher training focus on equipping teachers with the skills knowledge, and tools to drive change and improve standards as their core purpose. From just starting out to leadership roles, the aim was to fundamentally change the way that teachers are trained. One other additional benefit that we were able to participate in by way of a session was the feature on education technology. This gave examples of face-to-face and distance learning, which was designed to improve both teachers' and pupils' experience to make classrooms an aspiring place to learn. As I said earlier, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Tabichi was the winner of the Global Prize 2019, $1 million. He was chosen from 10 finalists who came from all corners of the globe, who from teaching in remote towns and villages to inner city schools advocated for inclusivity, for child's rights, integrating migrants into the classroom, nurturing their students' disabilities and confidence using music, the arts, technology, robotics, and science. Mr. Tabichi, it was noted, had dedicated his life to helping others. He is a Franciscan brother who gave 80% of his teaching salary to local community projects, including education, sustainable agriculture, and peace building. According to the information received at the conference, he changed the lives of his students in many ways, including the introduction of science clubs and the promotion of peace between different ethnic groups and religions. He also helped to address food insecurity in the wider community in the famine-prone Rift Valley. The education director and myself returned to the Bahamas on the 25th of March 2019, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to give a brief communication on legislation to facilitate growth in local crypto market that's out for public consultation. Mr. Speaker, I wish to advise this House that draft legislation has been put forth for public consultation to give the Bahamas a clear competitive advantage with respect to digital asset solutions as financial technologies continue to drive growth in the financial services sector. The Digital Assets and Registered Exchange Bill in 2019, DARE, which was developed by the Securities Commission of the Bahamas, provides solutions for digital asset applications and creates a proper regulatory framework for the Bahamas crypto markets. Disruptions caused by the digitalization of the economy are leading to a new wave of regulatory reforms. As countries around the world innovate new ways to safeguard against the erosion of their tax base, these developments will undoubtedly affect us here in the Bahamas. With the proposed DARE legislation, we are looking to the future, anticipating and preparing for the changes on the horizon, forming coalitions to influence the nature of change. The whole issue of cryptocurrencies and the assets is very dynamic. Over the past year, we have been deliberate in creating a regulatory environment that safeguards the country's economic interests and shores up our global competitiveness. These efforts will help to grow our reputation as an innovative and responsive financial center. The Bahamas has a budding crypto ecosystem, including crypto startups, exchanges, and traditional financial institutions servicing cryptocurrency companies. Requests continue to come to the government for related business like crypto custodians and companies conducting initial token offerings and security token offerings that want to base their businesses in the Bahamas. New legislative initiatives will facilitate that growth opportunities and drive innovation and diversification to the industry. Mr. Speaker, the DARE bill provides for the regulation of the issuance and sale of digital tokens and for the regulation of the conduct of those issuing digital tokens and those providing intermediary services related to the issuance of digital tokens. It also provides clarity with respect to stable coins. Specifically, the bill creates a legislative structure by which the proposed bill creates a legislative structure by which persons who wish to participate in the digital token space are guided on the requirements for entry to and participation in the industry. These requirements stipulate who may participate, the level of capital required, the rules for reporting, and seeking the Commission's approval and the penalties for failure to comply. Additionally, the rules stipulate that participants must adhere to established anti-money laundering and financing of terrorism laws, must take data protection measures related to the personal information of clients, and must implement measures to prevent data breaches, which would jeopardize the crypto assets of clients. The comprehensive bill will provide participants in the digital token space with clear rules of entry and operations in the Bahamas crypto markets. Again, Mr. Speaker, this is a proposed bill that is out for public consultation by the Securities Commission. The draft bill is available on the Securities Commission's website, and feedback may be sent to the SIA consultation at scb.gov.bs. That's SIA consultation at scb.gov.bs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Further statements and communications by ministers. Communications by the clerk.
Speaker, the report is agreed on messages from 21,
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Honorable members, I wish to report that I have in my possession messages number 22, 23, and 24 from the Honorable Senate, which I now table in this Honorable House. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign seat, and new writs. Presentation of petitions. Presentation of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay for first reading a bill for an act to amend the Stamp Act.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. A bill for an act to amend the Stamp Act. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for a first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Stamp Act.
Further first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I present for first reading a bill for an act to amend the Gaming Act.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. A bill for an act to amend the Gaming Act. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Gaming Act.
Further first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to present a bill for an act to amend the Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information Act. Mr. Speaker, this particular bill is a companion to a bill that was laid, I think the last time we met, on the multinational enterprises bill. And we intend to debate both of these as companion pieces of legislation today, for which the opposition has given its assent.
Honorable members on the official opposition. Thank you, honorable member. Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for the first time. A bill for an act to amend the Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information Act. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for the first time.
A bill for an act to amend the Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information Act.
Further first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
No further first readings, Mr. Speaker.
Second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I begin, let me just express well wishes to our colleague, the member for West End and Bimini, who had an accident at home, I guess. Hurt her knee, I believe. And so she's not with us today, and so we certainly wish her speedy recovery. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to take this opportunity to congratulate and to commend the Rotary Clubs of the Bahamas on their Rotary Youth Leadership Awards function on Saturday past. A wonderful program where a number of young people who are into positive activities, providing services to the community and their schools through selfless service. They're certainly to be commended. Some brilliant young people who are really doing positive things in our community, and I want to highlight them and congratulate them. Congratulate the organizers and the clubs, the Rotary clubs that sponsor these interacts and Rotaracts and early acts actors who are engaged in this valuable service to our community. The spirit of volunteerism in the Bahamas has generally been on the decline. And so to the extent that we can encourage these kinds of activities and these kinds of service organizations to instill in our young people the continuing need for us to help in the community wherever we can, certainly I think is worthy of commendation. And so I want to congratulate them and thank them for the work they do. I also want to extend congratulations to the St. George's Jaguars, high school Jaguars in Freeport, Grand Bahama, for winning the 2019 Basketball National Championships. Mr. Speaker, they would have defeated the Tabernacle Baptist Academy, also from Freeport in Grand Bahama, again solidifying that Grand Bahama is basketball country. Mr. Speaker, and for the sake of Garden Hills, there were all kinds of schools from Nassau in Grand Bahama. And, even some that may wear red, but I can tell you who that is. Aaron Bailey. But at the end of the day, I see that, Prime Minister. At the end of the day, the St. George's Jaguars were the victors, and certainly it was a very competitive game, as were all of the games. Again, I want to congratulate and commend those young people for their commitment and their skill and talent that they display on the court, the way that they respond to the coaching, the way they respond to the officiating. I think they conducted themselves admirably, and so I certainly want to commend them for that. And I want to thank all of the fans and supporters who came out. The gym was full, and I think that speaks well of us as a community. I want to encourage parents in particular to continue to come out and support your children in these positive activities, because all too often we are quick to shake our finger at those who do wrong, but we fail to recognize and to endorse, support those positive things that our young people are doing. And so I want to, again, just commend parents to come out, support your children in all their laudable undertakings. It will pay dividends. Mr. Speaker, as you know, there was an industrial accident in Grand Bahama on Friday, I think it was. Fortunately, there was no loss of life. And I think that we all ought to say a special thank you for that. We certainly do keep in our prayers those who were injured, some a little bit more so than others. Nonetheless, it was a traumatic experience for all of them. And so we certainly have our prayers and thoughts with them as they go through the process now of trying to determine what in fact happened, why it happened, and what amendments need to be made in order to ensure that we do not have a repeat of such an occurrence. As you know, Grand Bahama is the industrial capital of the Bahamas, and so all of these incidents we take very seriously, as we pride ourselves on the fact that we have had very few, if any, industrial accidents, certainly of this nature, in Grand Bahama, which speaks to the professionalism and diligence of the Bahamians that are involved, as well as those who come in to help us to build that sector, a very important and vital sector to the stability of Grand Bahama and indeed the Bahamas. And so again, we thank God that there was no serious injury or loss of life in that particular regard. Mr. Speaker, I want to endorse the Prime Minister's admonition of funding to the REACH organization. I think there is no higher calling for us than to provide assistance to those organizations that are doing positive things to help those, particularly those who are may have challenges in helping themselves. And I think it is to be certainly lauded, the initiatives that he announced this morning. I think that those will go a long way to helping this organization to achieve its objectives and to providing tangible assistance to those young people who need our assistance. Mr. Speaker, as they say, there are those who talk, and there are those who act. And this government, through our Prime Minister, is determining and showing the difference. And I was invited to check my record, and I think the record is clear, as the minister herself, or the member herself, spoke to this earlier. So again, those who talk and those who act. Mr. Speaker, I would like to address the House this morning on two amendment bills, in particular the Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Amendment Bill 2019 and the Multinational Entities Financial Reporting Amendment Bill 2019. Mr. Speaker, please allow me to first provide the members of the House with some background information on the Automatic Exchange of Information Act 2016, which we will be amending. The Automatic Exchange of Information Act, or AEOI, makes provision for the Bahamas competent authority to automatically exchange financial account information with a competent authority in a partner country, meaning one that the Bahamas has accepted as a reliable partner for the exchange of tax information. Further, and just to clarify, that is countries that we have confidence in that will treat the information that we share with the same level of diligence and due care for the respect of the privacy of the individuals that we may share information on. Because there are some countries that we have, and internationally have not been accepted for exchange of information because of the fact that the security of the information in that country and what it may be used for has not been satisfactory to the international community. Further, the Act provides for the implementation of the Common Reporting Standards, CRS, and due diligence for financial account information in tax matters. The Common Reporting Standard and due diligence procedures were devised and approved by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, on 1st July 2014. The OECD, established by the OECD Convention on 14 December 1960, is comprised of a standard-setting body consisting of a group of member countries concerned with issues of market economies, namely the G20 and the EU countries, along with Chile, Iceland, Israel, New Zealand, Switzerland, and just to name a few. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas implemented the OECD's Global Forum's international standard known as the Common Reporting Standard for the automatic exchange of financial account information in tax matters. To further strengthen its commitment with respect to tax transparency and tax cooperation, the Bahamas signed the Convention on Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters, or the MAC as we call it for short, on the 15th of December 2017 at the OECD's headquarters in Paris, France. Further, the Bahamas signed the Multilateral Competent Authority Agreement on 13th December 2017 during the margins of an automatic exchange of information meeting in San Marino, Italy, and successfully exchanged information with approximately 35 jurisdictions in September of 2018. Mr. Speaker, the Automatic Exchange of Information Act Amendment Bill 2019 is intended to amend Section 7 of the Principal Act to change the period of time for which a reporting financial institution is required to keep records from 5 years to 6 years. Under Section 7 of the Act, a reporting financial institution is required to keep or hold documents in the prescribed electronic readable format for a maximum period of 5 years. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to the Common Reporting Standard, jurisdictions are required to ensure that relevant records are kept for at least 5 years after the end of the period within which the reporting financial institution must report the information required to the competent authority. The Financial Action Task Force, or the FATF, recommendations require records to be maintained for a period not less than 5 years after the end of the calendar year in which the record is relevant. Also, CRS takes into account the FATF's period of 5 years in addition to the 1 year period within which the reporting financial institution must report the information required, hence the requirement of 6 years instead of 5. Mr. Speaker, at present, the current legislation is aligned with the FATF's requirement, but not in compliance with the Common Reporting Standard. The Bahamas is now in its second year of reporting under the CRS and the Automatic Exchange of Information Act, and we are under an obligation to ensure that the Bahamas legislation is consistent with CRS, and secondly, the Bahamas' reporting financial institutions are in full compliance with the Common Reporting Standard. Mr. Speaker, I will now move on to the amendment to the Multinational Entities Reporting Act 2018. The Bahamas became a member of the Inclusive Framework for the Implementation of the Base Erosion and Profit Shifting, or BEPS, in December of 2017. And as such, the country is committed to implementing the BEPS 4 minimum standards within the requisite time frame. These 4 minimum standards are Action 5, countering harmful tax practices, preferential regimes. Action 6, preventing tax treaty abuse. Action 13, country-by-country reporting. And Action 14, dispute resolution mechanisms. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas thought it prudent to implement the BEPS Action 13, country-by-country reporting. With this in mind, the Bahamas in July of 2018 enacted the Multinational Entities for Financial Reporting Act 2018, which provides for entities in the Bahamas that are part of a multinational entities group to report to the authority, meaning the government, on aggregate accounting information where such entity is the ultimate parent entity or the surrogate parent entity of that group. Mr. Speaker, Section 5 of the Principal Act sets out the finite details of the contents of the country-by-country report in which these multinational entities, or MNEs, are to report to the competent authority, which is the Ministry of Finance. In particular, Section 5(3) of the Act reads as follows. The country-by-country report required by this Act shall be filed no later than 12 months after the last day of the reporting fiscal year of the MNE group, except that the country-by-country report required with respect to the reporting fiscal year that began on or before 31st May 2018 shall be filed no later than 31st March 2019. Mr. Speaker, under Section 5(3) of the Act, the CBC, or country-by-country report, shall be filed no later than the 31st of March 2019 with respect to the reporting fiscal year that began on or before 31st May 2018. This means that for certain fiscal years, i.e. fiscal year ends between 1st of May 2018 and the 30th of April 2019, M&E groups may not be in a position to file a CBC report since their fiscal year would not have yet ended. Mr. Speaker, the Multinational Entities Financial Reporting Amendment Bill 2019 seeks to amend the restrictive time frame for the filing of a country-by-country report, which is contained in Section 5(3) of that Principal Act. Further, Mr. Speaker, the OECD country-by-country peer review report for the Bahamas contains a recommendation that the Bahamas should amend the deadline for filing a CBC report with respect to the specific filing deadlines relating to the reporting fiscal years that began on or before 31st May 2018 by deleting the words except for the country-by-country report required with respect to the reporting fiscal year that began on or before 31st May 2018 shall be no later than 31st March 2019. So we're taking out, Mr. Speaker, the deadline of 31st March 2019 as some institutions, by virtue of their calendar or their fiscal year ends, may run shorter than that date, meaning they would not have the opportunity or will not be reporting a full 12 months. And so we're just removing that deadline so that they will be reporting a full 12 months annually. And that's all the amendment's really seeking to do. Mr. Speaker, by removing this portion of Section 5(3), all companies will be allowed to file the CBC report for 12 months after their fiscal year end, regardless of when the fiscal year ends, thus allowing equal footing under the law. Mr. Speaker, both of these bills are amendments to existing legislation which make up the regulatory framework as it pertains to tax transparency, exchange of information, and cooperation for tax purposes and combating cross-border tax evasion. The Bahamas is making great progress in this area, and the Bahamas shall continue to pay attention not only to shifting goalposts, but to recommendations made from international organizations such as the OECD and others. You must bear in mind, Mr. Speaker, that our legislation will always come under scrutiny and assessment via international organizations, and in circumstances where the Bahamas is required or recommended to amend its laws, which provides enhanced regulatory frameworks for the country's financial services industry. Mr. Speaker, I am of the view that we should and we must do so. Mr. Speaker, this would demonstrate that the Bahamas, as a well-renowned, regulated international financial center, understands and is able to adapt to the ever-changing global landscape in which we operate. And Mr. Speaker, there are those who believe that we can stand still and hold back the tide. The reality is that this industry is consistently changing. And we have an obligation as regulators to ensure that we have in place and that we maintain up to date the relevant and current international best practices to ensure that we not only get off of these blacklists and gray lists, but that we are seen as leaders in this region and in this industry globally. The Bahamas' reputation has been significantly enhanced over the last year and a half or so because of the proactive nature in which we have engaged with all of the relevant stakeholders. And Mr. Speaker, I think it is important for industry as well as our people to ensure that we do not resile from that position, that we do not allow ourselves to believe for one instant that because we have met the standard today, that tomorrow we will not find ourselves being challenged with new and changing regulations. And so, Mr. Speaker, we continue to be aggressive, continue to be proactive, and continue to challenge the thinking of us as regulators, as well as industry, to ensure that we are on the cutting edge, not only in the best practices, but also in terms of the services and the products that we offer to the industry and to our global clients. The Bahamas is a leader, Mr. Speaker. It's seen as a leader in this space. And we must ensure that to the extent that we do not go outside of our competencies, that we are continue to maintain that position. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas has always cooperated with its international partners in the area of tax transparency and the exchange of information for tax purposes via mutual legal assistance treaties and tax information exchange agreements. The Bahamas intends to continue cooperating in this manner, showing that it will not be a place where persons or entities can evade taxes and or hide illegal or illicit gained wealth. Mr. Speaker, the amendments to the acts will not have a grave or significant impact on the financial institutions and entities operating in the Bahamas. As I indicated, these two amendments are really administrative, and they should not cause any significant changes in the way institutions do business. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, it is noteworthy to mention that the Bahamas was not included on the European Union's most recent list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes. To remain off the list of non-cooperative jurisdictions, the Bahamas, along with other jurisdictions, were not only required to implement new legislation relating to economic activity and substance requirements, requiring that companies engaged in certain commercial activities demonstrate real business activity and a substantial economic presence in the Bahamas, and the removal of preferential exemptions, which would eliminate advantages granted to non-resident companies aimed at attracting international investors, but was also required to satisfy the tax transparency and fair taxation criteria, which are as follows. 1, at least a largely compliant rating by the Global Forum with respect to the OECD's exchange of information on request standards. The ratified or agreed to have ratified the Convention on Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters, which we did sign. Have a network of agreements in force by December 2018, which is sufficiently broad to cover all EU member states, effectively allowing for the exchange of information on request and automatic exchange of information, which we also complied, and the implementation of the BEPS measures, which we also complied with. Mr. Speaker, in closing, the Bahamas must continue its efforts in the global fight against tax evasion, financial crimes, and corruption. We are aware of the G20's mandate with respect to tax transparency and exchange of information for tax purposes, and they are being very aggressive about this. And we are aware of the challenges adhering to international standards places on a country's resources. The G20 is now being led by Japan, who have indicated already their commitment to continue the fight towards the elimination of base erosion and profit shifting, and to enhance their cooperation and initiatives with respect to tax transparency. And so we have to be aware, Mr. Speaker, and ensure that we stay focused and abreast on those continuing developments. However, the positive aspects of cooperating with international partners and implementing international best practices will be reflected in the Bahamas' effective financial regulatory regime and securing its seat as the major premier international financial center. Mr. Speaker, I note in the newspapers this morning an article that refers to a report from the United States Department of State that offers commentary on the potential for money laundering risks and terrorist financing risks in the Bahamas. It references the desire, in their view, for us to institute a risk-based supervision approach on non-bank financial institutions. Mr. Speaker, I can report that the Compliance Commission, together with the Securities Commission, together with the Insurance Commission, together with the Financial Intelligence Unit, have already instituted a risk-based supervisory system. And so that is being addressed. They also reference the absence of a beneficial owners registry that would permit the authority to share with interested states, or competent authorities in interested states, information on the beneficial ownership of entities that may be in the Bahamas. We ask them about Delaware all the time. We ask them about Nevada, we ask them about Utah, we ask them about Arizona, all of these states that have similar issues. But as with all nations, as with all nations, they look outward to see what affects them inward. And so, similarly, big states tell small states. Nonetheless, we do. I can't pronounce that word, so I can leave that. So it is incumbent upon us to do what we need to do to ensure that we meet or exceed global standards and take our position and stand firm on that foundation. And that is what the Bahamas is doing. So in respect to the beneficial ownership registry, the Bahamas is already committed. And in fact, we've passed legislation in this House with respect to the beneficial ownership registry. We are in the process of collecting that information putting in place the systems and the regulations that will cover it, which the House will hear more about as we go forward. We are in close consultation with industry through its various associations and partnerships to ensure that we are all in lockstep in terms of how this will be rolled out and how the information will be accumulated, how it will be protected, because data protection is a very significant concern in this particular sphere. But make no mistake about it, that the Bahamas has committed through the highest level of the government and political directorate, as well as through this House and legislation for a comprehensive beneficial owners registry. They also talk about the lack of reporting of relevant status of tax with various states. I don't necessarily understand that particular comment, because we have been signatories and have cooperated and have exchanged effectively information, tax information with the United States through FATCA for a number of years now. I think it's 2010. And we've not had any significant, as to my knowledge, significant concerns about the quality or the level of information that's been exchanged. And so I don't exactly know what that means. And I'm sure that through our cooperative dialogue with the United States State Department, we'll get some more clarity on what it is that they're particularly talking about in that particular regard. But in addition to that, they mentioned the quality of the analysis and the work that is being done through the Financial Intelligence Unit. I can say, Mr. Speaker, that the government has paid particular attention to this, because this is an issue that is also raised by the FATF in their assessment back in, I think it was October of last year. And it is one that we take very seriously, because our commitment to a well-regulated and compliant jurisdiction is, in fact, supported and underpinned by the fact that we must have a very well-organized, well-operating, and efficient financial intelligence unit, such that suspicious transaction reports are not only collected, but they're acted on in a timely manner, so that we can provide reliable feedback to our law enforcement partners and to our international partners, as the case may be. And so this year we have upgraded, if I may use that, our financial intelligence unit. We have engaged new leadership with a new director, with Mr. Quinn McCartney, former Deputy Commissioner of the Royal Bahamas Police Force. We've also added to the complement of the FIU staff by hiring forensic accountants. And we will continue in accordance with the human resources plan that's been put forth by the director to supplement the resources, the human resource and capabilities of the FIU with additional forensic accountants, with additional analysts, with additional information technology experts, so that we have a fully functional, fully qualified FIU. We've also begun sending out our analysts for international training, both in the United States, as well as there's some training that's coming up in Central South America, and we will do more of this. In addition, we hope that we will be able to recruit some young talent that we can second to financial intelligence units, both in the U.S. as well as the U.K. and other jurisdictions, so that we learn best practices and that we come back with the network and the support that we need to ensure that not only are we effective, but we are seen to be effective. We have recently approved the acquisition of new information technology equipment for the Financial Intelligence Unit. Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, when I first walked into the FIU and they showed me the computer room, I have not seen beige computers since, I don't know, the beginning of my career. If you see a beige computer, trust me, that's at least the 1980s, at least. Yeah, exactly. Yellowing where it's been so, where it's been there so long. These big computer monitors that fill up a room. And that tells you that FIU has been neglected over the years. Well, no more. We've signed a contract and they have begun the upgrading of that technology and resource so that they have the latest available software and hardware to do the work that they do. And I'm pleased to say to the financial institutions who have been making these reports and have not been getting the kind of response and efficient resolution of their inquiries, that through the use of this technology and through the software that we've now acquired, being implemented now, we should start to see a very significant improvement in the feedback so that we close the loop on these suspicious transaction reports very, very quickly. The technology will also help us to facilitate liaison with the police force and the commercial crimes unit, where they do the actual criminal investigations, so that the feedback loop between the collection and analyzing of suspicious transaction report and the investigation of reports that are considered to be relevant or should be investigated from a criminal aspect, that information can be flowed back and forth effectively, and that we close this entire loop and result in a much more efficient and demonstratably efficient reporting system. Because one of the complaints, or one of the criticisms, both from this report as well as from the FATF, has been that we have not been able to document the disposition of STRs, and this system will allow us to track. Also, at the Attorney General's office, they are in the process of acquiring a $2.3 million case management system that will also allow us to be able to track these cases through the judicial system and to be able to provide real-time information as to the status. No, it's not. The real-time status of these cases. And it's not there now. The system is, as I understand it.
You're talking with the
Yeah. No, from what I understand, it is not an effective system. It is a very manual system. And I stand to be corrected on that particular point, but that's my understanding. Anyway, the system that we are implementing is a state-of-the-art system that is being used throughout the jurisdiction, and that will allow for more effective communication and updating of the records of these cases as they go through. Mr. Speaker, again, the Bahamas has been very, very aggressive, and the Office of the Minister of Legal Affairs and the Attorney General's office have been aggressively addressing the entire matter of the FATF deficiency list. We were upgraded in, I think it was November of last year, after they came back and did their second review. And by the way, that second review was the first time, I think, or it's certainly very unusual, that they would come back and do a reassessment so quickly. But it was a demonstration and respect of the fact that the Bahamas had been working tremendously hard, putting tremendous resources, both human and fiscal resources, financial resources, behind ensuring that we did all the things that we needed to do to ensure and to demonstrate that we have a significant commitment to this whole entire matter of preventing money laundering through our jurisdiction, and the facilitating any form of terrorist financing, which can have a devastating effect not only on our country, but international communities in which we are partners. And so we are very proud of the work that we have done, both in all agencies that have been involved in this fight, and we know that we have some additional work to be done, but we are, in fact, continuing to do that and to put the money and the resources to where it needs to be in order to ensure that we can not only talk the talk, but we can walk the walk. So, Mr. Speaker, as I take my last couple of comments here, I wish to, yeah, I'm Baptist. I'm doing the Baptist Church of God thing. I didn't get to my final conclusion yet. Mr. Speaker, I wish to update the House on my travels last week and the week before to attend the OECD's Global Forum on Value-Added Tax in Melbourne, Australia. Mr. Speaker, this forum brought together policymakers and technical experts from around the world and focused on strategies to address the shifting policy and technical challenges to global value-added tax systems arising from the digitization of the global economy and the rising sharing economy. Sharing economy is simply those entities, or the upspring of those entities like Airbnb and Uber or Lyft, or even houses where people may share the resource, the physical resource, for some benefit. Nobody necessarily owns it per se. It also addressed the use of technology in enhancing value-added tax compliance and audit procedures. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that global developments and innovation in the digital and sharing economies in particular will impact the Bahamas' retail and services sector, and thus our tax base. And it already has, to a large extent, affected the Bahamas economy to a largely unknown extent, as we know that the level of activity through Amazon and Airbnb, for instance, or for the contracting of professional services, such as architecture work or engineering work, that is provided offshore and is and distributed or sold to the Bahamas through digital means, is creating an unfair advantage to foreign providers over local providers. We also appreciate that these developments can have an effect on international opportunities to share in this space, and for us to be able to host such back office operations in the future. So we're looking at this not just from what it means for a erosion of our tax base, but also how we might be able to use this innovation to create new opportunities for us here to host these kinds of operations. Thus, being a part of the formation of the discussions in this regard is particularly important as we seek to keep abreast of developments in the international tax space and the policy implications, threats, and opportunities that may arise. Our exposure and networking with the global leaders in the thought process around these challenges should be challenges, or how these challenges should be addressed, was valuable and offered insight and tips on how we should be shaping our tax structure and administration of the tax system here in the Bahamas to ensure we remain internationally compliant and domestically competitive. Mr. Speaker, I was accompanied on this particular trip by the Financial Secretary and an aide. Mr. Speaker, again, these two amendments before us today are very simple administrative matters that will not cause or should not cause any significant concern to members or to the industry, but are yet necessary in order to ensure that our legislative guidelines are in line with international practice and the practicalities of those guidelines in the law. Likewise, Mr. Speaker, again, the industry itself is extremely important to us. We are in close collaboration with all stakeholders in the industry, and I want to make that clear, Mr. Speaker, because I from time to time hear feedback, even today, that some sectors of the financial services industry claim or make the representation that they are not consulted. Mr. Speaker, I want to debunk that, because the reality is that through the Securities Commission, through the Bahamas Financial Services Board, through AIBT, through the Ministry of Finance, through the Ministry of Financial Services, we have had numerous industry briefings on all of the developments from the time we started this entire process of addressing these EU, OECD tax transparency matters. We have had continuous dialogue with the industry. And those who are not informed, who have not taken advantage of those opportunities, I didn't want to use that. But they ought to make use of these opportunities to be informed, because there are a lot of misleading statements and impressions that are going out there. There's one that says that the Ministry of Finance is going to implement some corporate tax. We have never indicated to anybody that we are introducing anything about corporate tax. Never. What we have said, and we continue to say, as I said today, we continue to look at developments, we continue to read what is on the horizon, and we prepare. Because any decision that we make as a country going forward must be based upon empirical data. It is important, because we do not have the opportunity, we do not have the time now to be, in this day and age, to be making decisions on the fly. And so let me debunk again, for those who are out there spreading that the Ministry of Finance is talking about, that is intending to raise value-added tax or to implement any corporate income tax or any personal income tax. That is absolutely untrue. There is no such initiative. However, the Ministry of Finance and its agencies are doing the prudent and the required thing to ensure that we do the research so that we know the alternatives that are available, so that in the event that we are called upon to make a policy suggestion or recommendation, we are aimed, in the event, we are armed with the information. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Finance is in the process of restructuring, and we are setting up an economics unit that is going to be particularly aggressive in the research of our economy, so that, again, we are able to provide options to the government as and when it may be required. And that's not just this government. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Statistics, likewise, we are strengthening. Because, again, in order to make sound decisions, it must be based upon fact. That is where we are today. That is where the Bahamas finds itself in the evolution of governance. And we must make sure that we are doing justice to our people by not only making good political decisions, but making good, sound financial decisions, so that we don't do what we have done in the past, label or laden our children with bills and debt of the past, Mr. Speaker. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I recommend the two amendments for the House.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Is there a seconder? The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Marco City. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, seeing that we're very close to the lunch hour, we're going to suspend until 3 p.m., where we will then pick up the debate in earnest again.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Honourable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do suspend until 3 p.m. this afternoon. As many as are in favour will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House stands suspended until 3 p.m. this afternoon.